Are we live? I think we're live. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first channel to play Tormenta 20 in English. I'm Alexander Januzzi. I'll be your host and GM for this adventure. Tonight, it's not only our first time streaming. We've already released some videos playing adventures using the Tormenta 20 system, and there are more to come. But tonight, we'll begin our first adventure in the actual setting of Tormenta. So we prepared a short presentation, a bit of a session zero, if you will, to give some context to anyone who might not know too much about Tormenta and its history and rich lore. And when I said we prepared, I actually mean Victor Lucky did. So take it away, Lucky.
Hello, everyone. My name's Victor Lucky. I am many things: musician, writer, journalist, and I am a big fan of Tormenta since I was a kid. So, for our non-Brazilian friends out there, which I hope there are many of you guys watching us from all around the world, I prepared this brief presentation on Tormenta that I called Tormenta 101. So, let's start. I'm going to start with part 1, publication history, very brief. Tormenta started as everything started in around 1994 when Marcelo Cassaro started the Dragão Brasil magazine, which was for more than 10 years the #1 print publication about tabletop RPGs in Brazil. And it also covered many different types of role-playing gaming, entertainment like games and movies, and also did lots of original comic books, short stories. It was very important for artists at the time that there was such a publication. And soon after, two other guys named Rogério Saladino and JM Trevisan, they joined the magazine, and they started to publish different characters, different lore, different cities, kingdoms, stuff like that. And in 1999, they launched Tormenta. So the magazine still exists today. It came back in 2016 in digital format. And, well, like I said, in 1999, they released the first edition of Tormenta. Back then, it was a gift. If you got the magazine, you got the book as well. And in the same year, in August, they released Holy Avenger. That was a manga-style comic book, a Brazilian manga, if you will, that was published for almost 50 editions, including special editions. And this was the start of deepening the lore of Tormenta. And since then, we had many different rule books, source books, novels, comic books, live streams, and like big novels. The idea was that the campaign setting didn't need a new edition of the rulebook to actually change. It feels alive. There's always something happened in the world, the Tormenta world. And in 2022, this was just last year, they also released an introductory kit on Roll20, both in Brazilian Portuguese and English, that you can download. It contains a brief summary of rules, some lore, and an adventure that will take your characters from level 1 to level 3. Tormenta nowadays is published by Jambô Editora, a Brazilian-based publisher, and it's written by some of these people, not all of them. You have Marcelo Cassaro, one of the original creators, Guilherme Deisvalde, Leonel Caldela, JM Trevisan, also one of the original creators, Rafael Deisvalde. And if you look at the picture on the left corner, there is me. I am not relevant nor part of the team, but somehow I'm always around. This was taken just last year, by the way. So, with that in mind, let's go to part 2, which is Arton Den. Arton is the name of the world inside the lore of Tormenta. So, this is how the world was conceived back then, way back in 1999. This is a brief history of Arton. We had 20 gods, the Pantheon, and Tormenta was also created with some unique features at the time, like there was no Elven City. The Elven City was destroyed by an army of goblin folk. These guys here. We had a warmongering nation around the northern continent, and we had a goddess made prisoner inside a statue. So these were some of the unique elements that Tormenta brought to the table back then, and it evolved with the lore. After that, we also had the Tormenta itself, the thing that gives name to the campaign setting. It's an aberration from another universe. It's not really an out of the world invasion. It's an invading force that comes from a different reality, a different creation per se. So they have different laws of physics. They have different everything. It's like a non-Euclidean threat, if you will. And the inhabitants of that creation, like those cute little guys on the right, they are called Lefeu. It's the name of them. It's already the plural form. It's one Lefeu or two Lefeu or whatever. And they are depicted as insect-like creatures because in the lore they are so different from us that the mind cannot comprehend their horror, and the mind creates the insect-like appearance so we can actually process it. And for a very long time, nobody in the lore or the public, actually, just the creators, nobody knew for certain what the Tormenta was. Just it's an out of the world, but extremely out of the world invading force, and nobody can beat them. And the first interaction that Tormenta had with the world of Arton was in the continent of Tamura. That is the easternmost continent, a land where people's culture is based around honor and very rigid traditions. You can see on the top right on the map. So this was Arton back then, 1999. It's more than 20 years later, and more than 20 years in the world as well. Time passes in Arton. So let's take a look at how is Arton now. The pantheon changed. There are always 20 gods. Some gods fell, others came to power. So the goddess of elves fell, and Kaledranok, the god of dragons, who was a long forgotten god, people didn't remember him. He rose to divinity again. Ragnar, the god of death and the goblin folk, also fell, and he was killed and supplanted by Thor, the new god of goblin folk, that now call themselves Duishidak. So it's not goblin folk or anything like that anymore. They have a name, they have a proper name, they have proper culture and representation in the world. They are the Duishidak. Tauron, the god of strength and god of minotaurs, was killed by Aharadak, the god of Tormenta. So the Tormenta is gaining grounds in the world of Arton over time. And now the invading force have a god amongst the most powerful creatures in existence. Also, Keen, the god of war, was killed and replaced by Arsenal, who was for a very long time the biggest and most infamous villain in the Tormenta world. He was the high priest of the god of war, and he was not happy just being the high priest. He went there and replaced the guy altogether as the new god of war and victory. But the Tormenta was purged from the original continent of Tamura by General Sir Orion Drake and an army of lesser gods. It was an army of extremely powerful people, creatures, entities, I guess. Lesser god, not the big guys, not the Pantheon. The Pantheon is just the 20. And it was the first time that Arton the Mortals had a victory, a big victory against the Tormenta, but so far was the only one. And this haven't actually diminished the influence of Tormenta in Arton. And one of the proofs it's that we have now the Lefou, the people who are touched by the Tormenta in some ways. Usually people who have any kind of Tormenta-like characteristics, usually that comes with powers as well. Some of them decide to fight the threat, some of them embrace it. We have in our End of Times here 2 characters that are Lefou, and I am very proud to be the player of one of them. So let's see how that goes. And yes, this is the state of Arton now. We had wars, like big wars. We had the Tauric Wars. The Minotaurs decided to invade the kingdom, who is the coalition of nations. That warmongering nation that I talked earlier became the Purist Supremacy, which is a nation of bigots and people who hate everyone that's not a human. And they also waged war against the Central Nations. They lost the war, but they still exist. The kingdom, who was once a coalition that took all the countries you see on the map, or almost all of them, is way smaller now. Many nations decided to become independent. Some of them decided to do their own thing, and fewer nations are part of that now. But there's adventures everywhere. The core thing here is to remember that Arton was always considered a world full of problems, and over the years, many of those threats were reduced or solved by heroes. But a campaign setting without many threats is absolutely no fun, so there are new matters to solve, new challenges to face, new evil to destroy. And most of all, while there are still some old mysteries to solve, there are plenty of new ones, and many places full of adventure, intrigue, danger, and awe. Arton still is a world full of problems, and it's now our turn to fight some of them. So, we're almost in the middle of the continent. It's the region called the Central Hills, and we're about to find out what happens in the Central Hills. Alex, take it away.